Fable blanched at Ashling's words. To meet with the clan elders? She hadn't heard of the elders wishing to meet anyone since before the betrayal. She had yet to meet them, seeing as the clan's territory was off-limits, out of respect for the fox drakes. People didn't see them often, though they weren't as rare as unicorns. However, Fable was sure she saw one coming and going from Darnacia that wasn't Aisling.
"Are you sure, Aisling?"
Fable asked.
"I mean, I clam up around my elders and council. How can I explain the vision clearly?"
Aisling blinked at Fable and smiled.
Knowing Daydream, he should be able to see the vision fairly clearly. He and his mate are good at interpreting omens and signs. I believe together they can help decide what is best. Certainly with more efficiency than your council.
Fable bit her lip to keep from grinning at the thought. Aisling's displeasure with the Council of the Elves was no secret. That was more likely because they didn't accept Fable as a rightful council member. Truthfully, Fable would be the Soul Member, or the Member of Magic, who would travel with the Soul Member to and from the High Council as an apprentice, and offer their voice for the element of magic. Aisling nudged her hand, pulling her from her thoughts, and the girl gently petted the downy gray mane.
There's no need to worry about my elders. They do not squabble like squirrels over a walnut when there's work to be done. And they won't be looking down their snouts at you for being my keeper either.
This time, Fable chuckled.
"But knowing most of you have long snouts, I'd think that's the only way they could look at me."
Aisling trilled as Fable's mind filled with warm laughter.
Though with your stature, I'm sure you're the one that will look down at us.
She lifted her head and gave Fable's hand a playful bat of her paws before standing and stretching.
For now, get dressed and eat. It's a bit of a journey there, and you'll be thankful for food.
Fable nodded, grabbed her robe, and blew out the candles. Nature would clean out the herbs and flowers in the spring, so Fable gathered the tools she brought and walked back to the cottage, her mind full of what she'd learned, her stomach flipping with anxiety. The Darnacia Forest was one of the most extensive forests in the Elven territories. It stretched from the sea to the desert, and Fable and Creek had enjoyed exploring the woods when they were small. Fable had always felt at home in the forests, but today, as she rode into the thicker parts of Darnacia on Bluebell, all she could remember was her mother's advice not to enter the fox-drake territories. "It's not that it's forbidden," her mother would say. "It's more out of respect for them. You wouldn't want a dwarf stomping across your gardens unannounced, would you?" Fable had always listened to this advice because she didn't want to be someone who trampled across someone's gardens. As she ventured deeper into the forest, she noticed more wildlife. A deer passed across her path, and she stared at it curiously before it rushed away. There was a flock of feral hearthdrakes. The minor scorch marks on the leaves, where some hearths had squabbled, evidenced this. Aisling lounged comfortably between Bluebell's ears, watching the wildlife ahead of her with a peaceful air. She gracefully folded her wings back and held her head up, but her emerald eyes were half closed like a meditating cat.
"How far to the clan?"
Fable asked.
Just up this trail.
Aisling answered. She looked back at her keeper, whose dragon-like face grinned toothily.
You don't have to be nervous. You are a keeper and a clan member, as you and I are bound.
"Yeah, but still, it feels like I'm going to meet someone significant, like the king,"
Fable answered. Aisling huffed, her tail swishing.
Oh, hardly. Think of Daydream as a family head.
"Yeah, that doesn't make it better."
Fable answered. Aisling chuckled and scratched an annoying insect from her shoulder.
Then all I ask is that you trust me,
she suggested.
"That I can do."
Fable gulped, looking ahead again. They rode over a ridge before Fable saw a deep grove surrounded by limestone and oaks. She paused at the sight, noting that the forest opened up to the ocean, but stones, flat enough to walk on but too close for a ship to pass through, protected this opening. A tiny island was not far offshore, with a few oaks growing from its soil.
Bluebell won't be able to handle the path down,
Aisling explained as she stood and stretched between the mule's long ears.
Best to let her graze here. She'll be safe.
"Won't she wander?"
Fable asked as she dismounted and patted the mule's neck.
The clan will make sure she won't,
Aisling answered. She lifted her eyes to the trees, and Fable followed her gaze. Above and around them were a few fox drakes, mostly colored tans and dark browns. Fable watched them curiously, and they reflected her curiosity back at her. How long had they been there? Were they watching the whole time?
Of course we were.
Fable gasped at the unfamiliar voice, and a fox drake landed on Bluebell's saddle. He had a soft, gray-furred mane and an oak-brown body, though his paws and head were green. His eyes were the color of aventurine gemstones with odd markings around one of them. He turned to gaze at Fable and grinned at her gasp.
Jumpy for an elf, aren't you?
He asked, and Fable could feel a playful air about him.
That's because she's not used to others' voices.
Aisling answered, her tone stern at the younger drake.
Fable, this is Puck, guardian of mischief.
Oh, I've seen you around.
Puck answered as he stood and stretched his body.
You are quite jumpy. I would have had fun with you, but Aisling says she doesn't need your nonsense on top of the council's nonsense. Ha! I say you need to smile more.
Fable giggled at the young drake's antics as Aisling huffed irritably.
Are Daydream and his mate available?
Yeah.
Puck answered as he licked a paw.
Fortuna already knows you're coming for another visit.
Of course she does.
Aisling replied with a roll of her eyes. She climbed up onto Fable's shoulder and sat with a dignified air.
We should keep going.
Right.
Fable answered before giving a polite nod to Puck.
It's a pleasure meeting you at last.
The pleasure is mine, fair Fable.
Puck answered, giving a bow and spreading his wings. Fable waved farewell as she smiled at Aisling.
He's charming.
Flirtatious would be a better word for Puck.
Aisling answered.
He's young and pondering the idea of claiming a keeper, yet his pranks keep most suitors at bay.
Maybe that's how he'll find his keeper.
Fable replied.
The one person who can prank him back.
Aisling gave another huff as she and Fable went down the path. Fable couldn't help but notice other drakes along the way. Some were mothers with a couple of hatchlings, no bigger than kittens. Their unique colors and distinct traits reflected each drake's guardianship. As they walked by a small river, they saw a water guardian playing at the bank, collecting small stones while more hatchlings helped in the search. One even chirped excitedly at discovering a snail. They walked further in, more and more fox drakes looking up as Fable passed them, and a few followed curiously. Fable could hear their voices echoing in the back of her mind, but because there were so many, it sounded like wind and waves mixing.
I hope you can excuse this quick interruption of the story, but I want you all to know I have a Ko-fi available. I currently have a goal to raise enough money so that I can hire professional voice actors when my book is ready for an audiobook. So, any support I get through my Ko-fi will help Guardians and Keepers of Myth reach that goal. By becoming a member of my Ko-fi, you'll have early access to chapters of stories I'm working on, like The Blind Prince of Myth, The Tea Mage of Myth, and most recently, Button Buns and the Dreamweavers. You can also help my stories by liking and subscribing to my channel here on YouTube. I periodically post polls for new projects or artistic experiments for your viewing and listening enjoyment. I love to hear feedback as I explore the world of indie publishing. Thank you for listening, and now back to the story.
Soon they came to the center of the grove. It was dark and cool, like it would be around dusk or dawn, but it wasn't foreboding. Crystals were growing here and there among the trees, and even some plants glowed with what Fable could only guess was magic. In and under the trees were little holes, caves, where the fox drakes called home. It almost seemed like the trees were hollow, yet still alive and thriving even as the small dragons made their homes. In the center of the grove was a pool with a stone jutting over it like a sundial, and on the opposite end of the pool were 3 pillars of stone with an outcropping of rock beyond them. If Fable leaned to the side, she could see that past this outcropping was the sea, and a path of flat stones that led to a tiny island.
So you've come,
Came a powerful male voice. Fable refocused on what was before her as she saw a few fox drakes climbing onto the pillars. The centermost pillar held 2 drakes, a male and a female, both a rich hue of purple. However, the male was a vibrant royal purple, while the female was a soft lavender. The male's horns curved upward, and a delicately woven dream catcher decorated them. His wings were large, and when he spread them, Fable saw he had two pairs. The larger, like dragons, and the more petite, like mighty butterfly wings complete with long tails. He was quite the sight. The female beside him was plain, but a single glance told Fable she was extremely wise. One of her eyes lacked a pupil, but there was still a power there she couldn't quite describe. Aisling jumped off Fable's shoulder and led her onto the rock that leaned over the water, having the girl sit there.
My dear Fable, allow me to introduce our lead pair, Daydreamer and Fortuna.
Fable looked back up at the pair and gave her head a nod.
A pleasure and honor to meet you.
It is a pleasure to meet you at last, young keeper.
Spoke a soft female's voice, most likely Fortuna.
We were hoping to meet you one of these days, though it seems we aren't meeting on a joyous occasion.
Fable nodded as she spoke, but Daydreamer had opened his wings with a snap and flew over to Fable. He was larger than Aisling, and his sapphire eyes watched the elven girl closely.
It may be easiest to see what brings you here,
he said as he gently approached and nosed Fable's hand. Fable felt a rush of power flood through her and down her arm as Daydreamer's dream catcher glowed. When he pulled away, Fable watched as he climbed down to the pool's edge and dipped his nose into the water as if to drink, only for the ripples to show Fable's dream from beginning to end. The fox drakes gathered around the pool and watched the scenes unfold, some giving anxious calls at the sight of the fires destroying the forests, and more hissing in anger at the picture of the blue-eyed man and his Mara. However, Fortuna stood as the words from the dream whispered around them like scattered echoes.
The enemy of old seeks to return, to pillage and to maim and to burn. Only when the children of the two sisters unite can you hope to win the fight. Child of the sun, child of the moon, where one wants to run and one worries of doom. Find the guardian of secrets, for she only knows. She must overcome her regrets, or he will lay the sisters low.
Fortuna gazed into the pool for a long time as the fox drakes around them keened and murmured to each other. She took a breath and turned to Aisling.
How long ago was this vision seen?
Only a night. It was the Darnasea Elves' Full Moon Festival. We came right after Fable's cleansing ritual to share this.
Fortuna nodded.
Then allow me to offer some clarity.
She said as she sat, wrapping her tail around her paws.
Cozen is returning, or trying to find a way to myth.
The clan of fox drakes hissed anxiously, and some had flown to the trees to feel safe from the very name of the betrayer of their kin. Fable could sense their concern, and Aisling climbed to her shoulder to ease her keeper, though she was also anxious. Fortuna turned her head to Daydream as her mate climbed to her side again. Then her eyes looked to Fable.
Do you know the story?
I do, but not well.
Fable answered. Fortuna nodded, standing and opening her wings. The top of her wings split into 3 fingers, reminding Fable of dragonfly wings on each side. She floated down to one pedestal, and Fable could see it had glyphs. It showed a group of people, each with a fox drake on their shoulder.
In the Golden Age, before myth was even conceived, we selected keepers to create balance in the world and share our knowledge with anyone skilled in magic.
The glyphs lit up 2 figures, a wizard and a fox drake. Fortuna sighed.
Cozen. He was a bright young human sorcerer. He and his guardian, Locket, were as one, knowing when one needed something from the other. Locket was the guardian of secrets, and thus held every ancient secret in her heart. One of these secrets revealed the art of magic and how it could be harnessed.
Someone depicted the glyphs on the other pillar across the pool in darker tones.
Soon, Cozen wished to know more about the magic, and he knew Locket held these secrets. Locket initially refused, but she trusted her keeper deeply, and his prodding soon led to her surrendering what she knew. With this knowledge, Cozen attempted to control magic for his own use, seeking to command it. However, as no one can tame any element for themselves, he couldn't tame magic. The element went wild, causing cataclysms and driving creatures of magic mad. The humans grew fearful and began hunting those with magic. Whether as self-defense or an attempt to control their magic, I do not know. But this resulted in the world tearing itself apart in the madness.
Fortuna lowered her head as if remembering those days and longing for them like a home she could never see again. She shook herself and looked up.
There was only one option to save the world of Hirith, to lock magic away from humans, for good. The Fox-Drake elders of that time gave all their magic to create a new land for the creatures of magic, sacrificing themselves in the process. This land is Terra, or Myth, as it is now called, Gaia's sister world.
Fable watched as the pillar brightened in the blue glow, showing the images of what had happened, and put a hand to her mouth as she imagined the chaos and turmoil of that time. No wonder no one mentioned humans. After learning their place in history, Fable wouldn't want anything to do with them either. Though in the same token, she couldn't blame the humans for being wary. Elves and people like them were naturally adept at magic, like a duck to air and water and a dragon to fire. The magic went wild from how the humans saw it, and the elves ran away, leaving them to put out the fires. The conflicting thoughts made her stomach tie itself into knots.
The new elders evacuated every creature of magic they could gather to Myth, though some creatures that magic had corrupted could not join, such as the vampires, werewolves, banshees, and kelpies. Locket, too, remained behind. Her keeper's betrayal broke her heart, and she blamed herself for the magic's misuse. So she remained on Hiraeth to guard the door and ensure it remained a secret. Her last secret.
The pillars grew dark again, and Fortuna turned to look at Fable.
As far as we know, you are the only keeper now. If Kazan is searching for a way here, he will first seek Locket. With what your vision shows, you will need the help of the human that stood with you between Kazan and the elves of your village.
The fox-drakes murmured around her as Fable bit her lip. She didn't mean what she thought she meant, did she? Aisling stepped down from her keeper's shoulder and gazed at Fortuna.
What are you saying, then?
She asked, sensing her keeper had the same question. Fortuna met Aisling's gaze, her tail swishing.
You two must go to Hiraeth and find this boy, as well as Locket, before Kozan does.
Hi everyone, Fable here. I wanted to personally thank you for listening to Guardians and Keepers of Myth. If you want to support this story more, you can check out our Ko-fi. Or if you're excited to see what happens next, you can buy your own copy of the book. All the links will be in the description. Thank you all so much. This audio series wouldn't be here without your support.